When planning the road to success, there are a few steps to keep in mind. Identifying and solving the cause, facing and embracing change, goal setting, and being accountable. We'll talk about this today on Sustainable Success with Chris Salem. New and healthier habits lead to prosperity in all areas of your life and business. Now, here's your host, Chris Salem.
Well, welcome everybody. Hope everyone is having a great week. We are in the home stretch getting ready for the 4th of July weekend. Hope everyone has some great plans to take it easy and recharge as we come back to be, recharged so that we can then take on the second half of the year and finish strong in 2023. If you're new to Sustainable Success here now on the Voice America Business Channel, welcome. Again, you can listen to any of our episodes in the past here on the Voice America Business Channel, formerly the Influence Channel, which we were on. And also you can listen to on Apple Podcast as well as our Facebook page at Sustainable Success 17. That's Sustainable Success 17. Feel free to reach out and follow us there as well. Again, we got a great show for you planned today. Our show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a new social media platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types, an opportunity to rekindle old relationships and meet new people for the first time. This takes all the noise out of social media because it is a membership program. And you have the opportunity to generate genuine and authentic relationships with people that perhaps you have not spoke to in a while and with new people. Perhaps this could be an opportunity to land your next business venture or that new job. Feel free to check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. Well, as I mentioned, we got a great show today. We're going to be talking about prioritizing employee well-being for organizational success. And as we've talked about in the past, we've covered a lot of different well-being topics here. We understand the sustainable success way is that we look for things to keep us in harmony. It's not about balance, but it's about harmony, being in that alignment. And if well-being is not being addressed, how can we anticipate that employees are going to be engaged and operating at a higher level in terms of efficiency and productivity? Well, we got the right person in place today that's going to be sharing her experience, words, and wisdom in this particular area. Her name is Joyce Lynn White, someone I personally know and respect, and she's going to be sharing some information here. And before I introduce Joyce, I'm going to give you a little background. She is a business innovation strategist and founder of Joyce Ventures, LLC, and a partnership and impact officer at the goodlife.ai. And you're going to find out more about Good Life here and all the great things that they're doing to help companies and individuals in the AI space. She has over 40 years of experience of learning and working with organizations and is nationally recognized in the areas of positive change leadership, building culture and community, professional development, behavior diagnostics, and an analyst. She uses her successful career in education to launch her own consulting and coaching business, Joyce Ventures, and she's skilled and experienced at leading individuals and organizations through a wide variety of different things, through change, particularly in the area of well-being. And you're going to learn a lot about that. Now, I could keep going on and all the experience Joyce has had working with corporations, also with entrepreneurs. But without further ado, we welcome Joyce Lynn White to the show. Joyce, how you doing today?
Hey, Chris. Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We are so excited to have you here. So, when we talk about well-being, employee well-being, this has been a topic that's been at the forefront, for the last few years, especially when, COVID emerged and people were displaced and companies were operating remotely. And then all of a sudden people started to come back, but not exactly that they all came back. Some people were still working remotely and so on. So when we look at organizational success in kind of the dynamic that we're in, right now going forward, why is this more important than ever?
Well, I imagine you really have your finger on the pulse of this too, Chris, out speaking to all the people you are. But, let me ask you a question to kick that off.
Sure.
What do you hear that people are struggling with since the pandemic? And do you think it's more?
Yeah,
I would some numbers.
Yeah. No, I would say that when it comes to with employees, when I'm talking with HR directors, managers, and just companies in general, it always comes down to absenteeism is an issue. There's also workplace performance issues. Job burnout has been a big thing. And just overall, again, avoiding job burnout. Many companies are concerned that, because a lot of employees are now taking on multiple roles, being overworked, there's that tendency towards job burnout. So they're looking for ways to kind of find some harmony. I like to use the word harmony over balance in terms of work life, and just ways that they can kind of cut down on the absenteeism, especially with the younger generation. They're seeing a lot of Gen Z and younger millennials where people are more absent on average than the other way around. So those would be probably the issues that are taking place mainly in the corporate space.
Well, we have here's some information about that. So that supports that. So the World Economic Forum reports that, here we go. You talked about remote workers. 50% of remote workers feel isolated and disenfranchised. Now, here's another one. 83% of people working, not just remote workers, are saying they are reporting more stress since the pandemic. They're reporting stress. Now, stress translates into all the things you mentioned: overwhelmed, working more than one job, issues at work, issues at home, and all this costs a lot of money. So the money adds up to, the World Economic Forum says by 2030, it'll be $6 trillion of loss. It's a lot of money.
Yes.
Then you went on to mention millennials or Gen Z. So that's a population of our workforce that really does care a lot about the company culture. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Especially, I believe it or not, even more so the Gen Z in some ways. There's a lot of characteristics that Gen Z align with baby boomers, except that, there are, the Gen Z, I think, have characteristics of both baby boomers in terms if they feel like they're included and they feel like their needs are being met on some level, they're going to be committed to their roles. But yet they like the flexibility and that millennials, have come accustomed to.
Yeah, and they can have that flexibility, can't they? Because they can move, from one job to another. The more technical our jobs are, the more remote our jobs are. We have that. They have the ability to work a little while, and if they're not happy there, they can go on to something else. So in a study from Harvard, that was reported that, here you go, 91% of Gen Z and millennials believe that the organizational culture should support well-being. So that's what 91% are going to be looking at. What does it feel like? How am I valued when I work in this organization? They're going to look at the money, but they're going to look at that their well-being matters and what they care about matters. So that translates into, what kind of social impact for people and for our environment is there. So it's a more full-bodied organization that they're looking for, and then they will engage. They want to be part of it. They don't want to be disenfranchised. They want to be part of it, but they see the world as a better way. They want it to be better than generations before, and they care about that, Gen Z especially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So true. What do you see? I mean, Joyce, when you look at like where things are right now overall, when it comes to well-being, it's always a personal thing, right? Nobody's going to be able to, make us well, unless we decide that we're going to do the things that are going to make us well. But what do you feel like overall could be companies, regardless of size, can be doing to kind of help people recognize this in themselves? Like, that it's not, when it comes down to somebody's well-being, it's always going to be your responsibility, right? You, the person. But what can companies do to kind of, put that out there, to have people be, aware of, why they should be, prioritizing their well-being when it comes to, stepping up themselves in their careers and whatever's important.
Let's see, I had to unpack that one a little bit. There's a lot in that question.
Yeah, no, it's just like I said, like, what do you feel like when it comes to like employee well-being, what can companies be doing to, to put it out there? Like, make sure that, people are informed, that type of thing. So it's, again, a lot of times people may not know things because it's not shared with them.
Right. So I'm going to take the first part of that. When you say, Chris, what can companies be doing? They need to practice what they want. So if they want it to be different, they need to be different. So that starts, with shifting some of their practices from a reactive type practice to a positive proactive practice. So this, that's the top umbrella. And if we're going to have a proactive practice as an organization, how are we going to tell people that we believe that?
Yeah.
Is it going to be in our mission statement? Is it going to be in our vision statement? Okay, check, done that. We did that. Now what? Now we have to put it into practice. So we need to get it because we know what we measure gets done. So we need to put it in our goals and benchmarks and objectives, right? As a company. And then that translates down to how we are doing business and what we measure. So then we say very pragmatically, well, what does this look like? Now let's ask that question. If we care about this, and this is part of our mission to show people we care about them, and we know we're reading all the trends, we see all the information, we heard these statistics Joyce just said, right?
Yeah.
So now what do I do about it? What do I do? What do I do differently than I was doing before? So simple things like asking questions and listening. So instead of telling. So that's a proactive approach, asking questions and then actually listening to the responses and then taking some actions. That requires being transparent. Is that a value? Is transparency a value of your company? Or you mentioned authenticity, in the beginning. So authenticity and transparency, is that a value? So then what does that look like when we're working with employees, right? How do we provide for that? Do we have any type of flexible scheduling to show that we care? Do we, how do we know what our employees really want? That comes back to asking those questions. Sometimes we don't ask the questions because we're afraid to hear the answers, because we don't know what we're going to do with the answers, right?
Yeah.
The answers come in as a company and we're like, well, oh God, now what? Now we have to do something because they said this, or do we shove it in the filing cabinet and ignore it? Well, that comes back to, what do you want as a company? Do you want to attract this 91% of Gen Z and millennials that feel their well-being should be supported? Well-being doesn't always mean you need to make every person happy. It means, in your word, Chris, you care about that harmony. Because it's a harmony of work and life, and what are the things you need. So I have a little story from my history.
Please share.
So my stepmom, her name is Vivian, she's passed a long time. You can, with my 40 years of experience, I'm not a spring chicken. So she's passed away a long time, but in her 50s, she started a company in downtown Chicago, a manufacturing company. Now, this was pretty unheard of. You can say in the 50s that a 55-year-old woman would be starting a company.
Yeah, let alone just a woman in general at that age.
Oh, no kidding, right? So she's a great role model. She transitioned her life as a dancer into a manufacturer of costumes and designs and stuff like that. So she hired people, and the people, I interviewed her particularly about the people part of her business, because she said for 12 years, she only ever lost one employee from her start. So wow. I'm like, how does that happen? How does that happen? And so she told me some stories. Here's one, this is a myopic story, but it translates to the bigger picture. One woman who was a good worker, as she described her, but she started coming late and not showing up on time and, just having problems. So she brought her in and talked to her. She brought her manager in first and asked her manager to see if she could find anything out. The manager didn't know, was a dead end. So Vivian brought her in and talked to her, and she's actually had a problem with childcare. So what she did then was bring all the employees together, because many of them took the train from an area of, suburbs of Chicago, and they were in regionally some of the same areas, I think. So they found a solution together of how to solve this for the woman. And then that solved that problem. So when I say earlier, the buzzword of flexible scheduling or adapting, find out what the workers need. Another thing that they needed, which this was new to me, it was unheard of then, but she created a lunchroom for her employees. Now that wasn't a norm in the They didn't have a place with a little refrigerator and a this and a that, but these people had to take the train. She said at least an hour in and an hour back, and that cut into everything. And so she created this space for them. So things like asking questions, we could call it doing your market research for your employees, but asking questions and listening and see how you can come up with equitable solutions that create a win-win for the employer and for the employee.
Wow.
That creates well-being.
It does, because again, it's what you said, Joyce. I mean, even back in that time, I mean, this is going back 60, now almost 70 years ago, and that she was listening and people felt heard, and that is well-being, because when people feel like, hey, they've been heard, they're more likely to be open up about things that maybe could be holding them back, and that they can now feel psychologically safe to share. And that's always, in my opinion, always a great recipe for engagement and bringing, not only engagement, but people coming together now to complement one another, in terms of their role and duties, not like they depend on each other.
And every employer puts a lot of money into hiring practice, to retention, to training. And then we know recruitment costs a lot of money. So from this perspective of this story, what would it have cost her not to do that? There were some associated costs in time, effort, maybe construction, maybe adjusting of a schedule, the time of day, because she collaborated with other businesses in the building too. So I'm sure it took a little effort to do this. But what's the cost of not changing?
Yeah.
It's only when we get outside of our comfort zone. She went into that not knowing the answer. She didn't know how to fix this. So when we as an organization don't know how, we ask better questions. Just keep asking those questions and if it's not now, it's when. So does that answer a little bit with
absolutely does. Yeah, absolutely does. Yeah. So true.
We all know that picture of the comfort zone, and if you don't get out of it, how are you going to change, grow, and actually transform? So she transformed the way business was done.
Wow, that's fabulous. And I know we got less than a minute to the break, Joyce, but this was a powerful story that you shared, especially the timing too, that this went so back. She was a woman way ahead of her time in terms of seeing the bigger picture of, employee well-being and helping to bring people together. So to offset some of these particular issues that could be like tardiness and retention, or retention, absenteeism, and so on. So important. I know you got more to share here shortly, and I know we got to go to break here, but when we come back, you're going to be talking a lot more on some of the other things that are important priorities when it comes to employee well-being for organizational success. So again, if you're just joining us here, we're talking about prioritizing employee well-being for organizational success. with Joyce Lynn White. We got more to come. And when we come right back, Joyce is going to do a deeper dive into some of the other areas that can help move your employee well-being agenda strategy to the next level. And we'll be right back after the break.
Voice America is on LinkedIn. Connect with us today. What is balance? It's being true to your purpose and not being distracted by shiny objects, surrounding yourself with family and loved ones, nurturing your spirituality, maintaining healthy balance of emotional and physical wellness, and being present in the moment. Chris Salem creates awareness about unblocking mindset barriers for sales professionals, business leaders, entrepreneurs, and all types of people to have sustainable success at the next level. The solution evolves out of the problem or challenge. The issue is that many people and businesses manage the effect but do not address the root cause. You now have an opportunity to live your life and operate your business in the solution rather than the effect of your challenges. Schedule a time to chat about your goals and the person you desire to be by going to ChristopherSalem.com. We have group consulting calls, one-on-one, and other programs to assist you. It will be the best thing you do for yourself to see how sustainable success is possible for you in your life and business. Join us at the next level. Visit ChristopherSalem.com.
The business community's first choice in Internet Talk Radio. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to Sustainable Success with Chris Salem. Call into our program today at 1-866-472-5790. Again, that's 1-866-472-5790. Or send an email to Chris at ChristopherSalem.com. Now, back to Sustainable Success.
Well, welcome back, everybody. If you're just joining us, we're talking about prioritizing employee well-being for organizational success. We're here with Joyce Lynn White. We highly encourage you to listen to this show in its entirety here later today at the Voice America Business Channel. This is a really important topic, more than ever now, for organizations, regardless of size. And Joyce, you had shared a really interesting example, something that, even going way back to the 50s, and a woman-owned business, let alone at that time, and how, from like she was like a visionary already, like how she could see things that at that time were not happening and what she was doing to really create a psychologically safe, but yet a place where people could work, where well-being was in the forefront, whether she knew that consciously or not. That was the case. So it was being done. So, which was fantastic. And I know, that we have organizations here that are much larger than the example that, including we do have small businesses here. But I know you would like to share an example of something on a larger level. I know it goes back to your educational days in the education industry. If you could share some more insight, because again, stories really, when you share stories, they really resonate. And I know our audience will get a lot of value from that.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Well, let me give you a little background. So you mentioned my company, Joyce Ventures. Well, a whole chapter of my life before that, I worked in public education on a regional, state, and national level. So on those levels, what I worked with was working with changing systems from kind of what I mentioned in the beginning, from reactive educational systems, schools, we're talking about when we say educational systems, and their policies and practices being reactive to proactive. Because with a more proactive system, in the case of other organizations, your customers can flourish and your employees can flourish. In the case of public school, our target audience are students, right? The students and the teachers can flourish. So what I did for most of my career there is work with national leadership in creating these systems, and then working with specific schools, districts, and getting it in at statewide levels to have these systems change. So you asked for a story. I have a lot of experience with, working with school boards, principals, administrators, and finding out how to get buy-in for them to do this. I mentioned, organizations, you need to get out of your comfort zone. You have to ask yourself, do you really want to do that? And then you say yes, and then you face, oh my God, it's going to be a lot of work. How do I do this? Like, I'm already busy, right? How can I make this shift? Well, there's a way of implementing this, that it's in sort of phases, so that you can make things change, and you don't do it all at once. You create a blueprint or a roadmap, and then you can make these things change. So a story of me working, let's say a table of 12 people. And they were having a challenge. We're in year 2 already. So when you have any organization and you have a group of leaders around the table, everyone has their own responsibilities. So sometimes they have a little bit of blinders on of how to make something work, because they're busy thinking and responsible for their jobs, right? And so then time to see how this can work together. So one day, and this particular group was having a challenge. They sort of wanted to buy in, but they're so busy being busy, they had a hard time like making a shift they had a mandate even to make this happen, and they still had a trouble making a shift. So I actually bought in bread dough, not baked bread, but bread dough. And as I was talking, I broke this bread dough into 3 big strands. It was a lot of dough across a whole table. And because really with 12 people, there was still 3 sort of areas of interest that people felt they couldn't do this because they had to satisfy their own outcomes. So they couldn't buy into what was happening. So as I was demonstrating, I actually braided the bread dough into one loaf. And, they then got it how together their needs, and their needs could all be satisfied into one thing, and make this blueprint happen, because everybody doesn't have to do everything. In a reactive system, often departments don't work together. They have a challenge to work together because they all have their own reports to do. They have, those let's say it's a report. In this case, it was grant money coming in, So if they have their own reports, I help them find ways that those reports, actually parts of them are duplicated. They aren't all the same, the reports. So they could, in this case, there was ways for them to sort of get parts of the reports from each other and just fill in the specifics that they needed, saving each department a lot of time and then satisfying the overall goal. And how that is effective. So in a school's case, the student is their income. They don't measure it so much in dollars. They measure it in grades, and they measure it in different ways, but there's dollars attached to everything, right? So just like a company, this saved each department a lot of money. And in this case, it increased their most valuable thing, which was student contact time, because they were taking department heads away from students to write reports. So students got substitute teachers. They got less master teachers. So they got poorer instructions. Therefore, their grades went down and behaviors went up, kicked out of the classroom, so to speak, right? So when you look at the system, and that's what I do, my master's in organizational leadership. So you look at the data and see what's really happening, and how can you adjust that system with practices that help people thrive, right? And not duplicate their work, because there's a lot of duplication and overlap in production of what people are actually doing. I know we look at that in numbers, we do gap analysis, but if you do those gap analysis, you can also see what people are actually doing. and asking them, what would make that easier? People don't always know. You have to observe, and there's a lot of things to that. But so that was a kind of fun activity because it did flip the switch. I got lucky.
Yeah.
And things went zoomed after that. And then, so that's a larger organization. As an example of adjusting practices so that our employees and our recipients, whoever they are, can thrive. We focus that way a lot on customers. We watch that with customers. We don't watch it as much with employees. Would you agree?
I agree. I think, I'm always an advocate if we're going to create better customer experiences or more valuable experiences, that always starts with what's going on inside the company, what's happening with the people individually as a team and as an organization working together for that to reflect outward.
I was in a, big box store and with a phone, we have problems with our phones. So I had a really dilemma and this young man helped me a lot. And he gave me full on attention. There were a lot of other people there clamoring for his, time. And I really appreciated it. I so appreciated it. And I really kind of gushed over him and thanked him for doing that. And I was very specific about what was beneficial to me, not just thank you. I really appreciate it. But I said, you did this, you did this, you did this. And all those things helped me so much. And his response to me was, wow, that's really great that you say that. I wish my company would say something like that to me. That's really telling, isn't it?
Yeah. It's when you say that, it's just something, a lot of times people think it's money that just motivates people to, it's those simple gestures, the appreciation, the gratefulness, and that simple thank you, like you said, can go a long way.
That's what adds up into this statistic. 91% of Gen Z and millennials want their well-being to be cared about. When we see numbers, we don't put real people stories to it. But when this young man at, the big box store, and that's what adds into that number to say, yeah, you don't really care about me. You care about the customers only, but not me. And that trickles down to exactly what you said. Do the managers walk the floor looking for what's wrong or for what's right?
Yeah. Yep. It's so true.
But they only look for what they're told to look for. I'm not picking on managers, because what are they graded on? What are, their performance reviews? Does performance review include how many times have you recognized one of your employees for a job well done? Maybe not, right?
No, yeah.
So,
it could be one of those in those MBOs. Yeah. You
get what you're looking for. So that's when I say this term, like shift from reactive to proactive, that's an example, one example. There isn't like a top, I could make a top 5 list, but that gets kind of vanilla. You get to an organization and you can do this, but you phase things in on the practices that you do.
Yeah. No, I agree. That was a great point that we're sharing there, Joyce. And this is so important. What would be some of the things that, people that are listening, like if when it comes down to prioritizing employee well-being, there's so many things that can be done, right? And always the hardest part is getting started, and so what would be something you could suggest would be that first step? What could be like a first step? And it doesn't have to be, it's like one thing, but if it is, it is. But what could be that first step they could take?
I'd say the first step is look in your vision and mission statement and see if it says anything about the people that you're serving, which means your employees, not your customers.
Yeah.
So does it say anything? Do you have anything in your objectives? Do you have anything in your belief statements, or values that say you care about that? Yeah. Many companies have their values, but they don't say how they demonstrate that. So that would be the very next step. Let's say you do have values, transparency. So what does transparency look like for HR? What does it look like for production? What does it look like here? So how is that going to implement? I'll give you another story. A simple story. So I'm teaching gymnastics at the Y. Everybody knows the YMCA. The YMCA does have values. So when I'm teaching little 6-year-olds, I'd say today we're practicing respect. Respect looks like we're going to say respect looks like a safety, meaning we're going to stand 12 inches behind the person in front of us because they're going on the short little balance beam. It's 2 inches off the ground, but we don't want them to fall. We don't want to bump them. Nobody's going to get hurt. So that's what respect looks like today. The grown-up version of that can be done in organizations. So what's that look like? Right? We can ask those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And those questions are, that would you say have to be not like once in a while, but, sometimes we have to say it multiple times just because we want to make sure that we're specific, clear, and concise, and we can really relate and understand, and people are hearing it.
Right. It can be really in the, onboarding handbook, so that we have that. And what does this look like? We have nice mission statement, nice vision statement. We have our values. What does this mean? What does this look like at our company? This is how we behave here. So because what do we want as an outcome? Outcomes driven. We want blank, blank, blank employees. We want for your show, we want happy, healthy habits for our employees, right? We want sustainable outcomes for the company.
Yeah. So
many companies are moving towards getting coaches, life coaches, and hiring in live life coaches. And there's a lot of benefits to having life coaches available to mediate challenges employees are having before they get really big. Companies have EAP programs, when that's more of a crisis intervention though. So the question a company organization leader wants to ask is, do I have to wait till something gets that bad?
Yeah. Instead of being reactive, let's be proactive.
Yeah.
Respond versus react.
Right. So, companies are leading into that, hiring in life coaches or coaches that can be accessible, maybe not in person. Sometimes it's just in writing, they have an appointment and work with a life coach. So that is also another thing to consider. And there's good data that is working. I actually have a report I'll mention at the end that gives some data on that.
Yeah, no, we'd love to hear that. And I know we got about a minute and a half or so to the break, and I know you got more to share. Anything else that you would like to, round out this segment that you shared on, starting with your powerful story in the education space and everything you've shared up to this point? We got about a minute for the break. I'd love to see if you could summarize the key points that you talked about with the audience.
Well, I talked about, making a decision first. You have to make a decision if you care about the well-being, even if you don't understand yet what it translates into dollars saved. There's a lot of numbers out there, and the report that I have will tell you many of those numbers. So you're making a decision to be different. Yeah. And then you have to be brave and have courage. So first you make a decision. You have to have courage to make a difference. And then you go about that, finding people that can help you make that transition. So, and then there's practices. So maybe you sit down with your team and decide if you have any of those practices in place, or where can you start putting them in? The costs are staggering. So stress is costing organizations like staggering amounts. If you have
amazing.
100 employees, 62 are struggling with stress-related problems. 230 days are lost annually from those 62 people, and for every 100 people, it's $189,000.
Yeah,
as reported by the workforce, United States Workforce Report.
Yeah. Well, I know, Joyce, you got more to share. These is some valuable information we're talking about here. Prioritizing employee well-being for organizational success. We'll be right back after the break.
Follow Voice America at facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts. What is balance? It's being true to your purpose and not being distracted by shiny objects, surrounding yourself with family and loved ones, nurturing your spirituality, maintaining a healthy balance of emotional and physical wellness, and being present in the moment. Chris Salem creates awareness about unblocking mindset barriers for sales professionals, business leaders, entrepreneurs, and all types of people to have sustainable success at the next level. The solution evolves out of the problem or challenge. The issue is that many people and businesses manage the effect but do not address the root cause. You now have an opportunity to live your life and operate your business in the solution rather than the effect of your challenges. Schedule a time to chat about your goals and the person you desire to be by going to ChristopherSalem.com. We have group consulting calls, one-on-one, and other programs to assist you. It will be the best thing you do for yourself to see how sustainable success is possible for you in your life and business. Join us at the next level. Visit ChristopherSalem.com.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to Sustainable Success with Chris Salem. Call into our program today at 1-866-472-5790. Again, that's 1-866-472-5790. Or send an email to Chris at ChristopherSalem.com. Now, back to Sustainable Success.
Well, welcome back. We're talking about prioritizing employee well-being for organizational success. We're here with Joyce Lynn White. Today's show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct, a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types, chance to meet new people as well as rekindle old relationships. It's a membership program with a wide array of different programs and services that are not available to the general public, and a great for business owners and those looking to get into their own business. Check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. So Joyce, you had shared so much valuable information here up to this point, talking about, prioritizing employee well-being, what it means to the organization, regardless of size, in terms of their success. And you laid out some of the, the key areas that, organizations could be looking into. You shared stories. Talk a little bit about the importance now of tools and resources, particularly digital resources and tools that could help in this particular area to really bridge the gap and create more awareness, accountability, and traction towards achieving desired metrics, performance, results, that type of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Chris. Well, I'll backtrack a little bit to the story that I was talking about, the time in my career where I was working with changing organizations in the educational systems. Well, what we didn't have then was a way to track the data. There weren't systems that they were a little bit archaic and very hand-driven ways to track whether these changes that were being made were working, because these are behavioral changes. So I've always looked for systems to be able to do that, so we can look at qualitative and quantitative data and come up with a summary of how things are changing and, based on what outcomes we're hoping for. So fast forward, I started my own business. And then now you mentioned in the beginning that I was part of a company called thegoodlife.ai. So in 2017, I met with a woman named Stephanie Frank, who I previously known, and a man, Bryce Kuhlman, who became the co-founders of this company, thegoodlife.ai. And we formed a team. And I was thrilled. My background is, I mentioned organizational leadership, but my expertise specifically is in positive psychology, all different behavioral diagnostics, and also behavioral change programs like cognitive behavioral therapy, that kind of thing. Emotional intelligence, all those different diagnostics. So we came together and we had an essential question. Bryce is more the technology. Stephanie is some too. But we asked the question, how, with our joint expertise, how can we marry positive psychology with smart technology? So with that question and a long road, a path working together, we developed a few products. And this product that today, what I'm talking about, that I'm the social impact officer and partnership officer of the Good Life, is a digital coach. In the previous segment, I talked about, live life coaches. Well, we are in the age of AI and technology. The thing that I want to emphasize about our AI is that it's a closed AI. This is not the Wild West of open source AI. So we are HIPAA compliant, and it's a closed system. But what a digital coach can do, our coach is named Jeannie. She is a chat-based program, so you pretty much have a chat on your phone with this coach using evidence-based practices and behavioral science, and you talk to her. So an example might be, is Jeannie, I want to do a check-in. She checks your well-being. If you want, she asks you if you want to do that. You do a check-in and you say, oh, gee, Jeannie, I'm having a problem today. Let's say you're in sales. I got to make these phone calls and I've been procrastinating and I just can't make myself do it. So Jeannie goes through coaching with you like a live coach. It's the same practices as a live coach. And, she'll ask you, where is this happening in your life, and go through different questions and come up with an activity for you to help you with that procrastination or fear, wherever that's coming from. Now you might ask, how does she know? Who am I? How does she know who's on the other end? This is a AI. How does she know anything? Well, that's what's unique about this. And that's the part that I'm very excited about, is that it's personality based. So Jeannie knows who you are because you've told her through chats, not through taking a whole bunch of tests, but through chats and different questions and the magic of very smart technology. She understands your personality. She knows your values. She knows your strengths. And your emotional intelligence, and even more things. So when she offers something to you, you're going to say, wow, that was just right for me. How did she, out of all the things she could have chose to help me with, how did she know that? Because she understands. So a good coach, what they're there for is to help you be your best, not to tell you what to do, but to help you uncover that and live your best life. It's the good life, right? Live your best life. So does that make sense to you, Chris?
It makes total sense. Yes, absolutely. And talk a little bit about, now with this technology, Joyce, obviously people are familiar with Chat GPT. That's been all the buzz lately. But there, you actually, with the Good Life, you had actually had this in beta and already had launched prior to that. And talk a little bit about how these types of tools can really, especially from the accountability part, because I think that's the most important thing. There are great resources for awareness,
right?
But awareness is only as good as you if you apply what you're learning to do something that improves your well-being. If it's just awareness, then that's all it is. If you could share some insights to that. Yeah,
that's really great, Chris. So how do people use this? Is this just right, you're calling it awareness, that's just sort of one and done. It's not, because the coach, you have understanding of all those things I said to you. So you come up with what we call your hero profile. You have a hero within. And then you understand, she teaches you about yourself. You also have, every time you come in, you have little charts that tell you about your well-being, tell you about what your mood is on what day over time. So maybe you'll see on Tuesdays, maybe you weren't aware of this, On Tuesdays, your mood is sort of in the tank, at what time of day? And then there's some trends to that. When you have data and you have historical data, then you can have projective data. So you can anticipate what might be. So now you're very interested in healthy habits, the whole theme of this show. So Jeannie helps you create those habits to adjust those trends so that you can move up the scale. So she's aware of that too. Now you don't only have to come with a problem. Let's say you want to learn more about a certain topic. You can ask and she'll give you information about that topic, and you can ask for more and more. She'll ask you, is that enough? Do you want to learn more? Let's say you want to set yourself a challenge, productivity, Chris, so you can go on a quest. She teaches you how to write goals. You write your goals, your to-dos. She reminds you, you get texts. She tells you the dates that they're due, and brings you back in. So I give this example, like how can a digital coach feel real? So, and what I think is so important, how no two people are treated alike. So I remember distinctly one of my college experiences. The first college I went to in my undergrad was a very small college. And then I'm like, Dad, I want to go someplace bigger. I want to get out of here. I want to go to LA. And he says, well, you can go to Salt Lake City. Your brother lives there. So I went that far. And then I'm in a class with, 700 people instead of, 30. So I'm sitting next to somebody and this professor's talking, and it was like he wasn't talking English. Like I didn't understand it at all, what they were saying. And I turned to this person next to me and I said, do you get this? And he said, he's the best instructor I've ever had. Well, that teacher was teaching to that person's learning style, but not mine, because I didn't get it. Have you ever had that kind of experience where two people hear the same content and they're like, what are they saying? What's going on? And the other person thinks it's the best thing since sliced bread. It has to do with your learning style. So when Jeannie, the coach, understands that, so when she talks to you, she's going to talk to you differently than someone else.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. And is it safe to say that as it gets more information, it really starts to really get to really know now some of the things, it picks up on the things that can really start tapping in to help you because it builds that intelligence.
It builds the intelligence, right? Yeah. And now I want you to remember, this is a closed system. This is a patented closed system. So it's not going out to any open source back and forth, bringing anything in. This was all built in the engine inside of it, in the architecture. Now, how can this help companies? How can this help an organization? We provide this to organizations for their employees or associations, any type of organization. Well, how can it help them? As an aggregate data, how do you think it would help an organization, Chris, if they didn't know individual? We never give out any individual information, but as, let's say, that 100 people that I was talking about, 62 are struggling, 230 days lost. So if they're looking at a grouping of 100 people with cumulative or aggregated data, they know what days of the week is the most stress. On the CDC mood and the CDC well-being metrics, they know of those 10 metrics, what area is the problem.
Absolutely.
What could they do with that information?
Yeah.
And then being able to project that and say, oh, this April, this is what it looks like. What could it look like next April?
Absolutely. Joyce, I know you have more to share, and I know we're going to have you back on to elaborate further on a few elaboration to this topic. We're towards the end of the show, and I want to make sure, because we have less than a minute, that you can let people know how to learn more about the good AI. How can they get a demo? How can they reach out, get to know you?
I think the first thing that they want to do is get our white paper from our advisor, psychologist, why leaders need to provide well-being support through personalized coaching. You get that at www.thegoodlife.ai/workplace-wellbeing, workplace-wellbeing. And just going to The Good Life is how they get to me. You'll see my little face down there at the bottom and fill out the form and get an appointment.
Awesome. Well, we highly encourage, Joyce, we want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us here today. Thank you.
You're welcome, Chris. Thanks so much for inviting me, and happy birthday coming up.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, we want to make sure you, the listeners, and those listening later, please get to know goodlife.ai. Reach out to Joyce on LinkedIn. Send her an email. Get to know her. Definitely somebody you should know. And again, get that white paper. Get some more information and learn about the Good Life and how it can help your organization, regardless of size. If you also have any questions, reach out to us here at Chris or ChristopherSalem.com, and we'll make sure to get that message also over to Joyce and the Good Life AI. Till then, everybody, have a great rest of your week. Have a great 4th of July, and we'll see you next Thursday at 3 p.m. East Coast time.
Thank you for tuning into Sustainable Success. Be sure to join Chris Salem and his guests every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Time and 3 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Business Channel. Have an incredible week.